In the quiet suburban landscape of 1987, a profound tragedy unfolded, shattering the illusion of safety. Janet, a 39-year-old woman, was discovered murdered in her own home. A life abruptly ended. The peace of a seemingly ordinary day, irrevocably broken. But the immediate shock soon gave way to a deeper, more unsettling mystery. The crime scene offered few answers. The perpetrator, a phantom. This wasn't just a murder, it was a puzzle, one that would defy resolution for decades. A case destined, it seemed, to remain forever cold. When investigators first arrived, the scene itself was a contradiction. No forced entry. No shattered windows. Every door, every lock, seemingly undisturbed. This wasn't the work of a desperate intruder. Further, there were no signs of a struggle. No overturned furniture. No shattered lamps. The usual chaos of a violent confrontation was conspicuously absent. And perhaps most perplexing, nothing of obvious value appeared to have been taken. The house was quiet, almost pristine. A crime committed without a footprint, without a tremor. A ghost in the machine. What was the meaning of this chilling order? With no external signs of a break-in, the gaze of law enforcement naturally turned inward. To those closest to Janet. Her husband, Mark, immediately became the focus. A standard procedure. An unfortunate reality in many domestic homicides. Every aspect of his life, his relationship with Janet, his movements, meticulously scrutinized. He cooperated fully, providing an alibi for the time of the murder. A detailed account. One that, after rigorous verification, proved to be solid. Piece by painstaking piece, the initial cloud of suspicion began to lift. But if not Mark, then who? The questions deepened. The initial investigation stretched for months. Every lead pursued. Every potential witness interviewed. Yet, each path led to another dead end. The lack of a clear motive, combined with the absence of forensic evidence, or what was perceived as such, proved insurmountable. Detectives faced immense frustration. The case, despite their best efforts, began to cool. The files grew thicker, but the answers remained elusive. Soon, the active investigation dwindled. Janet's murder, a tragic stain on the community, slowly receded into the grim category of unsolved. A haunting reminder. Years turned into decades. The once fresh memories of Janet, her life, her tragic end, faded into the past for many. For her loved ones, however, the wound remained open, unhealed by the passage of time. The specter of an unknown killer walking free. The unanswered questions. Generations passed. Technology advanced. But Janet's case remained locked away, a testament to its perplexing nature. A cold case. A file gathering dust, year after year. Was it destined to stay that way? A silent plea for justice echoing through the ages. Hope, a flickering candle. But the narrative of the unsolved isn't always final. In the 2010s, a new determination emerged within law enforcement. Dedicated cold case units, armed with fresh perspectives and advanced forensic tools, began revisiting the seemingly uncrackable. Files long dormant were pulled from storage. Old evidence, once deemed insufficient, now held new potential. It was a commitment to the victims, to their families, to the principle that no case should remain truly cold forever. Janet's file. It resurfaced. A chance. A new beginning. A glimmer of hope, however faint. A new team, with fresh eyes and unbiased minds, took on Janet's case. They brought a different methodology, an understanding that what was overlooked decades ago might now be amplified by new science. Their approach wasn't to search for new evidence, but to re-examine every single piece of existing evidence. To scrutinize details once dismissed. To challenge assumptions. It was a painstaking, often tedious process. A slow immersion into the grim realities of the past. The goal? To find the one anomaly, the one misplaced thread that could unravel the entire knot. They started from the very beginning. The original crime scene photographs, the meticulously documented evidence logs, even the police reports from 1987 were all brought under the microscope once more. The team wasn't looking for a smoking gun, they were searching for a whisper. An almost imperceptible irregularity. Something the technology of the past simply couldn't interpret. Or perhaps, something so seemingly insignificant that it was deemed irrelevant at the time. A crack in the facade. A flaw in the perfect, silent crime. The weight of 3 decades pressed down. But they persisted. What tiny detail might hold the key? After weeks of exhaustive review, poring over every document, every image, a pattern began to emerge. Not a clear lead, but a subtle inconsistency. A recurring note in the original reports about a specific area of the house. Nothing conclusive, but enough to draw attention. The new team decided to focus their efforts there. To revisit the specific locations mentioned. To seek out what might have been overlooked, ignored, or simply beyond the capabilities of an earlier era. A faint signal. A thread, however thin, that might lead somewhere. Anywhere. The smallest hope was enough. Their focus narrowed to a windowsill in Janet's home. A seemingly innocuous detail. The initial report had mentioned it briefly, noting a slight discoloration, dismissed as dirt or an old stain. But the new team saw something else. Under specific lighting, at a precise angle, an almost imperceptible smudge. Not a bold mark. Not a clear impression. Just a faint, hazy smear. To the untrained eye, nothing. To a cold case investigator, trained to see beyond the obvious, it was everything. A question mark etched onto the surface. Could this be it? The single, pivotal detail? The smudge, barely visible, presented a challenge. But the new forensic capabilities were vastly superior to those of 1987. Specialists were called in. The delicate process of trying to lift or enhance the mark began. Each step, meticulous. Each movement, precise. This wasn't a clear print found on a drinking glass. This was an elusive ghost, clinging to a dusty surface. The hopes of the entire investigation rested on this one, tiny detail. Could it yield its secret? Could science, decades later, finally coax an answer from this silent witness? And then, the breakthrough. After hours of painstaking work, the faint smudge began to reveal its true nature. It wasn't dirt. It wasn't a stain. It was a latent fingerprint. A partial print, yes, but undeniably human. And crucially, it was viable. For decades, it had sat there, an invisible signature of the killer, waiting to be seen. A single point of contact. A touch that sealed a fate. The silence of the house had finally yielded its greatest secret. A shiver of anticipation went through the team. The impossible, now within reach. The cold case, suddenly warming. With the latent print secured and digitally enhanced, it was time for the next crucial step, running it through the National Fingerprint Database. A resource that simply didn't exist in its current form in 1987. Millions of prints. A vast network of criminal records. The odds of a match, even with a partial print, were slim. But they were not zero. The team held its breath. The computer processed the data, comparing intricate patterns, ridges, and loops. Each second felt like an eternity. Would this be the moment? Would technology finally give Janet the justice she deserved? Then, it happened. A match. Not a possibility, but a definitive identification. The system flagged a name, Robert. A local handyman. Known to police for a history of petty thefts, minor burglaries. Not a hardened violent criminal, but someone familiar with entering homes, with opportunistic crime. The shock was palpable. For decades, investigators had speculated about a personal connection, a jilted lover, a vengeful acquaintance. But Robert? An unknown. A ghost from the margins. And another layer of complexity, Robert had died in 2012. He was already gone. With Robert identified, investigators could finally begin to reconstruct the events of that fateful day in 1987. It started to make sense. The lack of forced entry. The absence of a struggle. Nothing stolen. It pointed away from a premeditated murder or a violent robbery. Instead, a chilling scenario emerged. Robert, the handyman, had likely been hired by Janet for a small repair. Perhaps that very window sill. He would have been invited in. He saw an opportunity. The vulnerability. The perfect storm. The perfect, unexpected killer. The new theory solidified. Robert, having gained access, likely decided on the spur of the moment to commit a far more serious crime than his usual petty theft. The murder itself might have been a panicked reaction, a sudden act of violence to silence Janet, who perhaps recognized him, or tried to resist his unexpected advance. The lack of struggle suggested it was quick, unexpected, not a prolonged fight. He then fled, leaving no other discernible trace, save for that one microscopic imprint on the window sill. A silent witness, almost missed, for 30 years. The identification of Robert finally brought an end to decades of speculation and anguish for Janet's family. The case, officially, was closed. The killer was known. But it was a bittersweet resolution. Robert, having died in 2012, was beyond the reach of the law. There would be no trial, no public confession, no official conviction. Justice, in its traditional sense, was interrupted. Yet, the truth had emerged. The unknown was finally revealed. And a sense of peace, however incomplete, could at last begin for those who had waited so long. Janet's cold case stands as a powerful testament to the enduring nature of forensic evidence and the unwavering dedication of cold case investigators. That one piece of evidence, almost imperceptible, dismissed by an earlier era, ultimately held the entire truth. A single fingerprint, a silent whisper from the past, bridged 3 decades of mystery. It proved that time, while it may obscure, rarely obliterates. It simply waits for the right eyes, the right tools, and the unyielding will to seek the truth. The cold case that shocked investigators, solved by a single, tiny smudge.